Hey, Thursday really stuck up on me, so here we are. Predictions for UFC 286, Usman versus Edwards number 3. Or I guess technically this would be Edwards versus Usman because usually you put the champion first. So anyways, the rematch of the fight that honestly, it's a series that feels like it's to Usman, despite the fact that Edwards won the last fight. Anyways, I'm Mio. This is Mio on MMA Podcast. I'm a fan of MMA for better than 2 decades and practicing BJJ guy and whatever. All the stuff I normally say. I should really actually at some point just film an intro, but not something I've thought I've I don't know. I kind of like the whole stumbling over stuff. Anyways, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner had a very brief flash and you missed it, or blink and you missed it, mixed martial arts amateur career. And let's break down the fight card. If you haven't already, give me a follow, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and check out the links down below. There is a Discord server where you can participate in the Mio Mixed Martial Arts Sim, as well as some other stuff that we've come up with over the times. Slam ball, professional wrestling, and there's just a bunch of MMA fans to interact with. So hey, this card is interesting. But to be honest, the thing that is most interesting about this card to me is I'm enthralled by the betting odds because there are some really wide betting odds on this card that are kind of weird. And if you like the underdog in those fights, there might be money to be had because there are some big underdogs here that I don't think really make sense as underdogs, even if I'm picking against them. I shouldn't say that they don't make sense as underdogs. Don't make sense as large underdogs. How many underdogs am I picking on this card? I've got one. I put a wrong odd there. That should be a plus, not a minus. I think I'm just picking one underdog. Am I correct in that? Well, I mean, two, depending on where Morales and Duncan are at your particular betting odds of choice location. Because depending on where you look, both of them are underdogs. Technically, it's a pick'em fight. Yeah, so yeah, I'm only picking one underdog, but there are some big underdogs here that I don't think make a lot of sense. So let's start with Edwards Usman 3. Leon is 2 inches taller, but ironically, Usman has 2 inches more of reach. We've seen this fight twice before. Usman won the first one, fairly convincingly. It was one of the closer fights in his up and coming run to the title, but it was, pretty clear cut. And then Edwards went on his run, showed some great improvement, and came back and got the head kick knockout in the second one. But he was down 3-1 in that fight. And I don't necessarily think his improvements, while good overall, have actually been very useful for fighting Usman himself. Because a lot of what he took from the first fight and implemented into his game was learning how to fight in the clinch better. Learning how to, be in the clinch, but, get things done. Get things done on the break. Get things done with the dirty boxing, with knees, with clinch fighting, and become a better clinch wrestler. The thing is that I don't actually think he's a better clinch wrestler or clinch fighter than Usman is at this point. Because, Usman is a guy who's been wrestling for a long time. And really the lesson should have essentially been that Edwards should have become better at avoiding the clinch. He should have focused on his evasive footwork, essentially, which is still fairly bad. He can be backed into the cage fairly easily. He can be taken down against the cage fairly easily because if both of your feet hit the cage, there's nowhere for you to go for a lot of takedown defense, and it's going to be very, very difficult. And he's also been interesting in the sense that I think Edwards is for a guy as good as he is, a UFC champion, one of the best welterweights in the world, in my opinion, and that's not necessarily based on the belt, that's based on where he was before the Usman fight. We are talking about a guy who is not super comfortable being on the front foot and pressing an advantage. but is also not super comfortable or even that effective necessarily as a counter fighter. And that's kind of weird. It's kind of weird that he has that athletic ability and he's made it work his game to this level. Do I have reservations about Kamaru Usman winning this fight? Absolutely. We saw him get knocked out 6 months ago. That's a massive dynamic change in the fight. We know Edwards can knock out Usman. We know we can put him down. We know we can put him out. But how much of that was him coasting in the 5th round of their fight? How much of that was the altitude? Those are also questions that go into this. Usman also does have documentedly terrible knees and hands. A hand injury almost derailed this fight. You could actually go on the Joe Rogan Experience if you dare to want to. I forget what episode it was, but there was an episode where he was talking with someone, a personal trainer of some kind, or workout guy of some kind. I'm sorry, I'm not into that world. Where he's talking about how bad Usman's knees are and how he has to walk on grass and not on concrete, and his trainers have to come up with all kinds of interesting, creative ways for him to work out because that's how bad his knees are. So we are at some point going to get a Tyron Woodley-esque detonation for Kamaru Usman, I think. Ironically, for Woodley, it was the Usman fight. Where, because his style, it's not even the same, because with Woodley, the problem was Woodley had this horribly constructed style that relied entirely on explosive power to make up for the fact that he wasn't very active and he was willing to back himself up into the cages and all of these things. Like, all of these problems were like only his style only functioned because of high level athleticism. Usman is not that, because I think Usman has actually built a decent style. It's just that Usman's physical decline, I think, is going to hit a cliff at some point and just like go whoa, way down, nosedive. Maybe that's this fight. Maybe. It could be any fight. But it's probably something I'm not going to predict beforehand and like trust to it with like a pick. So I've got Usman by decision. He's not finished Edwards in what is almost 8 rounds of fighting. So does he do it here? I kind of doubt it. But I think basically the dynamic from rounds 2, 3, and 4 of their second fight is still absolutely there. All of the things that he could do are still in play. And it's only been 6 months. I don't trust a 6-month period to be a transformation for Edwards in a way that would let me pick him in this fight. Now, if he knocks out Usman again, I obviously cannot be surprised because he did it in the second fight. That's what I mean by saying, if you're an Edwards fan and you think he's going to win this fight, I can't argue with you. The man did knock out Usman. We have that cold, hard proof that he can do it. But the stylistic matchup still is Usman's to win. And the betting odds support this. Kamaru Usman minus 225 to minus 260. Edwards is plus 175 to plus 210. That does feel about right. About right. Which is weird to say, again, for, a guy coming off a win over that same guy. Justin Gaethje, Rafael Fiziev. Gaethje is 3 inches taller, but ironically has always had this, not great reach. And Fiziev, of course, does have a large reach for a man of his height because he's got actually the 1.5 inch reach edge here. I think with fans, there's a crisis of what Gaethje is, because he is incredibly exciting. He is so exciting. He could fight a mop and it would be exciting. That's the type of fighter he is. He's can't miss viewing that is always worth it to put it on a pay-per-view card. That being said, I think there's a push to make that equal him being an elite fighter that I don't think he ever has been. When he was coming up through WSOF, he had no defense whatsoever and was just violence incarnated. He's gotten better. He can roll punches now. He blocks punches. He defends his head notably better than he used to. It moves, etc. So basically, fundamental defense is actually there. But his body is still wide open to get hit. His legs are wide open to get hit. He has a wrestling game. He actually has a pretty good wrestling pedigree, which was, made abundantly hyped up during the lead up to the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight. But he doesn't really use it. And I would say also it doesn't really suit his style. He loves throwing leg kicks. He loves throwing overloaded punches and a little bit of head hunting. And it's worked against guys who are breaking down, who are questionable durability and questionable reactivity. If you look at his career, it's a lot of guys who are easily breakable or guys who are past their prime. Easily breakable would be Michael Johnson, would be James Vick, past their prime, and Edson Barbosa to a certain degree. Past their prime would be obviously Donald Cerrone and Tony Ferguson, but also Michael Chandler. And that makes up his 6 UFC wins. And, obviously he had a great run in WSOF, but like the highlight of that was beating Buscape Firmino or Luis Palomino? Probably Palomino. Melvin Gillard, I guess, if we need a UFC fan. JZ Cavalcanti, if we're ignoring the fact that even by 2013, Cavalcanti was pretty much a complete shell. That's the word I'm looking for. Shell of himself. And then, of course, the famous fight with Nick Newell. Fiziev represents, if not a better striker than any of those guys, then at least a more in his prime elite striker of all of those guys. He's fast, powerful. His fight with RDA was very, very impressive. Now, granted, RDA also a shell of himself. And that's the pushback I expect to probably see in terms of picking Fiziev is, Fiziev is also largely faced guys who are either in the downswing of their career, like a Brad Riddle, who's had really big problems lately, or older fighters like RDA and Bobby Green, or just in general flawed fighters. Looking at you, Mark Giacchese, looking at Alex White. Yeah, that is kind of sad. Alex White is probably still in his top 10 victories of all time. Probably his 6th most impressive victory. That is not great. That is not a great place to be. But he's been going up and getting better every fight. He's been improving and showing us more and more, whether it's a takedown defense when that's called upon, whether that's utilizing new techniques, whether that's fixing his cardio issues a little bit. Because I still think he has a little bit of a cardio problem. I still think he would fade in, say, a 5-round fight. But, I'm at the point where I'm actually pretty comfortable saying Fiziev has 3-round cardio. And, of course, Gaethje has his own cardio issues, although it is not necessarily the size of his gas tank. Sorry. I had a little yawn there. It's the fact that he fights at such a breakneck pace, throwing incredible volume, that unless you're Merab Dvalishvili, as we saw against Peter Yan, you will fade. That is just how that's going to work. The idea is that he's going to self-destruct the opponent with pace and break them down in the process of depleting his own gas tank. He's still incredibly durable. Gaethje is insanely tough. But I am going with Rafael Fiziev to win a decision. The odds are in his favor, minus 220 to minus 245. Gaethje's plus 175 to plus 195. That's one of those ones that is too wide. At nearly plus 200, I'd think about betting on Gaethje just because Fiziev is still a fairly unproven commodity. Gunnar Nelson, Brian Barberena, they are more or less at parity reach-wise, height-wise, and so on. Same height or same reach. Barberena is slightly taller, so, effectively is the longer fighter, but at the same time, Nelson is the better outside fighter. Nelson's striking is defined by slow, methodical, accurate punching and kicking at range, and of course, clinch and takedowns and solid grappling on the ground. He's been a phenomenal grappler through much of his career. He was one of the big European pioneers towards bringing them to prominence in jiu-jitsu. But here's the thing. We have seen him fight once in 3 years. And that was against Takeshi Sato, who is not good. When I say that, I mean at a UFC level. At a UFC level, Takeshi Sato is not good. He's low-paced. He's a guy who was absolutely going to have the fight that Gunnar Nelson wanted. And it was very much a classic UFC showcase, Go out there, get a win. We've hung on to this guy almost exclusively for you to beat. And go out there, get the job done. And that's not Barberena. Don't get me wrong. I'm picking Nelson here. I am picking Nelson here, but this is one of those big, bizarre underdog situations. Barberena is a live dog here. Dude is tough. He is chaotic. He will press a pace. He will bring the fight to Nelson. These are things that Nelson has in the past struggled with. Although, to be clear, he doesn't have the wrestling of Rick Story. He doesn't have the Demian Maia or Gilbert Burns, absolute killer grappler that those two had. He doesn't have the general physicality, honestly, of Leon Edwards. And he has a little bit of Santiago Ponzinibbio to him, but like not nearly as much as Ponzinibbio had when he beat Gunnar Nelson. So like he doesn't have those things, but he does press. He is a fairly smart fighter, actually. Barberena is actually notable for making in-fight adjustments. He's well-rounded. He can bring the fight on the ground and on the feet. And it's kind of weird because looking at Gunnar Nelson's record, while I just went through how like all of the guys that he lost to have something Barberena doesn't. But everyone that Gunnar is beaten has a lot of flaws that Barberena doesn't. Takeshi Sato fights at a low pace. Alex Oliveira is just a mess. Alan Joban has no particularly great ground game. Same with Albert Tumanov. And Brandon Thatch has a notably terrible ground game. And then Zach Cummings and Omar Akhmedov have some very specific problems. And then by the time we're past that, we're back in like 2013, and he's beating guys like George Santiago, DeMarcus Johnson. So it's kind of weird that like Brian Barberena might be the biggest win of Gunnar Nelson's career if he wins this fight. But I do think he does. I think that he has good enough range striking, good enough footwork, good enough ability to keep Barberena from engaging in the pocket on him at will. He can step up his volume and pace as he needs. He does have some takedowns. Barberena can be taken down. He can lock him down on the ground. I don't think he finishes him because Barberena is very, very hard to finish. I've got Nelson by decision. But the odds have Nelson at minus 350 to minus 430 and Barberena at plus 280 to plus 305. Plus 300 underdog against Gunnar Nelson, a guy who's fought once in 3 years, is getting old. I don't know about that, my guys. I don't know about that. I'm still picking Nelson. And to be clear here, whenever I'm talking about betting, bet responsibly, know your limits, all those cliche statements. But if you're looking for a live dog that's kind of big, this one might be it. Demian Maia versus Casey O'Neill. O'Neill 2 inches taller, 5 inches longer. But like, let's be honest here, Jennifer Maia is used to fighting at a reach disadvantage. She's been doing it essentially her whole career. So let's talk about Maia. She is a well-rounded, tough veteran. She surprised me in the Marina Barros fight. The boxing looked a lot crisper. She looked faster too. Honestly, that was the big thing. That like she looked actually pretty quick and like dynamic with her striking, and she had not really looked that way before. She is the definition of a veteran test. She's an incredibly game opponent, well-rounded, good grappler, hard to finish. Is not going to be surprised by anything because she's essentially seen it all. And that's a little bit of my concern. I've been late to the Casey O'Neill bandwagon, but I do like what I see. She's becoming better in all ways. She's becoming a better volume striker. She's a very good grappler, excellent grappler. And I think particularly, to be clear here, her ground and pound by women's MMA standards is phenomenal. She really actually does have like lethality there and venom. Like she hits hard when she gets a dominant position. And I see great future for her. Kind of like a lesser Erin Blanchfield. Like it's a similar style. It's maybe a little bit better on the feet, a little bit less on the ground. But the big difference that I can't get past with O'Neill is that she does not have the physical power that Blanchfield does. And that's not just like seeing it, but like that's just like a problem in general. Like she kind of got muscled down by Roxanne Modafferi in their fight and Roxanne's retirement fight. She got taken down and controlled and had a hard time dealing with the physicality of Laura Procopio. And she's used to being able to utilize the clinch as a weapon. That's a place that Maia is incredibly good at neutralizing people. And that has given me all kinds of pause in this fight. But at some point, I got to trust a prospect, right? At some point, I got to trust somebody who has taken steps forward in every fight to actually be better on fight day and who has proven to be fairly smart, fairly good at a game plan, fairly good at some tactical adaptations. And that is Casey O'Neill. So I'm picking O'Neill by decision because essentially no one finishes Maia. She has been finished, obviously. It's an exaggeration to say she's never been finished. She's lost 9 times. But like this is a woman that went the distance with Manon Fiorot. This is a woman who's went the distance with Caitlin Chukagian. Not that that's all that impressive, but twice. That went the distance with Valentina Shevchenko, Liz Carmouche, Deanna Bennett, Leslie Smith, and has been finished by Sheila Graf and possibly Vanessa Porto. There's no method listed on Tapology here for her 2011 loss to Porto, but has not been finished since 2012. And as much as like O'Neill does impress me with her ground and pound, it's not that impressive, and the power doesn't seem to necessarily translate to her feet. So O'Neill as the minus 175 to minus 185 favorite is the pick. Maia at plus 140 to plus 156. That is a live dog. It's not a big dog, and I don't necessarily think the line is too wide. It's just that Maia represents a much higher test than Roxanne Modafferi. Because love Roxy, one of my favorite female fighters of all time, but distinctly lacking in a lot of physical ways. Doesn't have necessarily great range finding because of her eyesight, and was, retiring, which I always think is a sign that a fighter is not going to fight particularly greatly. Then we have Marvin Vettori, Roman Dolidze. Dolidze has 2 inches in height, 2 inches in reach. These two fighters are a mess. They are physical fighters. They are in that mold of a Dricus du Plessis, where it's like, I don't know if any of this should actually work. This is bizarre and janky and confusing how your games are built. They both like to clinch. They both like to bully. They both like to be the stronger guy. They both are immensely strong. They both are immensely tough. And the question is essentially who can be tougher, who can be stronger. Because, like, honestly, legitimately, I think that when these two clinch up, and they will clinch up because neither of them have a functional range game, honestly. Well, Dolidze does, actually. Dolidze has some interesting body kicks and leg kicks to his game at range. But he has no real ability to stay at range. And Vettori doesn't have a range game. Just period. They will clinch. And to be honest, it's who controls the clinch who ends up being stronger, because these guys, like I said, these are bully fighters. I don't know that their game functions when they don't have that physical edge. I just don't. So it's who you think is stronger, I guess. Although I trust Vittori's coaching a little bit more. He is embedded at I think it's Extreme Couture now, because he's been working out with Sean Strickland lately, right? That was like kind of their big like reveal. Yeah, Extreme Couture. Who is Dolidze was also at Extreme Couture. Who is he with now? Doesn't say. Fighting at Odessa, Ukraine. Let's see. Does Wikipedia have an answer? Wikipedia sometimes is ahead of the game when it comes to the camps. No, it still has him at a. Oh no, it might have him at American Kickboxing Academy, actually, because it's saying AKA here, and I don't remember him being at AKA before. He was at. Extreme Couture. The other option would be, where is Cheyenne Bays / Full Metal training right now? It still has her listed at Extreme Couture in Florida. I don't know. I guess in the end, I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. Dolidze doesn't strike me as like... Dolidze strikes me as a guy who learns techniques, but like doesn't necessarily adapt it to a style. Like, obviously, his win against Jack Hermanson, the super cool like calf slicer, rear naked choke position, was pretty damn cool. But, and he also, like I said, he obviously does learn stuff. But I don't know. He just seems like a very meathead fighter. And I'm not saying that can't work, because Vettori is a meathead fighter. Dricus du Plessis is a meathead fighter. This is the division for that. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Vettori. He's a little bit more proven. But honestly, if you have a good feeling about Dolidze heading into this fight, I am not gonna argue with you. And I have good news for you. So Vettori is minus 265 to minus 295. But Bet Rivers, according to Best Fight Odds, has him at minus 715. If that is an actual line, and you can get Dolidze at the flip side for plus 460. Wow. That is underdog odds that are really making it hard for me to not go there. Hang on. I'm going there. We're doing the rarity here. I may be placing a literal bet while filming this, because I gotta talk about this. If it is actually the thing. I have not used Bet Rivers in so long. Where is the UFC 268 stuff? Where is it? I hate this website. I really do hate this website. Whatever. I'll figure it out later. But like, if you can go to Bet Rivers and find that bet line, you might want to bet it. Because that's some stupid stuff. Okay. Yeah. But I am going with Vettori by decision. Jack Shore, Makwan Amirkhani. Makwan Amirkhani is 2 inches taller, 1 inch in reach. It doesn't matter, because we know what Makwan Amirkhani is going to do. He's going to come out, he's going to try and grapple and strangle Jack Shore. And for the first 2 minutes, it's going to be scary, because the first 2 minutes is always scary with him. I'm still not overly certain about this featherweight move for Jack Shore, but yeah, Makwan Amirkhani, between the fact that he seems to have a bad gas tank, he adrenaline dumps, whatever it is, he gets tired and he gasses out and he gets finished. And that's usually how things go. That's how I'm picking it. I have no faith in SBG Ireland or whatever gym in Finland he's training at to actually fix what he's going through. And Shore, that being said, Shore is a prohibitive favorite. Minus 490 to minus 550. Amirkhani plus 350 to 390. If you're going to bet on that, you're betting on Amirkhani. You're not betting on Shore. But Shore by TKO is the pick. Then we get into the undercard fights that is a lot of like debuting fighters, because we have, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 debuting fighters. And it's actually the 3 bottom fights that actually have like, or the 4 bottom fights actually, that have 2 veterans in them. So on the debut streak here, we got Chris Duncan and Omar Morales. Morales has a 2.5 inch reach edge in this fight. Not that I think that really particularly matters. I want to like Chris Duncan. I do. I think there's a very good action fighter in him. I think there's actually a fighter that's really trying to become better as well. Like I think there's a guy that has a methodical, improvement-based thought to the sport, which I respect. You know, getting more technical and doing it in the right ways. I just don't think that there's an athlete. He's primarily a range striker, but he gets clipped a lot. His head does not move nearly as much as I would like to see. His wrestling appears to be very much a B game that he goes to and does seem shut downable just on like a physicality and strength level. I have questions about Morales as well. There was his whole like, I'm going to go down to 145, which seemed like a really bad idea. And it was. Nothing about him convinces me that he is comfortable in what he's doing as a fighter, but he is athletic. He is pretty well rounded, has a decent low output, but relatively high power kickboxing game. He has a power grappling game. It's basic, but it's effective. And I'm picking him to TKO Chris Duncan because I to be clear, if Duncan wins, I'm going to be very happy because I don't think Morales is a long-term prospect. I think he got into MMA a little bit too late. He's now 37 years old, and he's distinctly uncomfortable in a chaotic fight. So, like, I want Duncan to win because Duncan is, I think, much younger. Okay, not much. Not as young as I thought. I thought he was like mid-20s. He's 29. But like he's 29. He's a guy who does seem to be like actively trying to improve himself with a fun fighting style. That's something to cheer for. It's just I really have concerns about his limitations. Like if he goes out there and he styles on Morales, I'm gonna be happy because that means that like maybe the physicality is not as much of a problem as I think. But I got Morales by TKO. Duncan's minus 105 to minus 118. Morales is minus 102 to minus 115. So they are pretty much equal odds across the board. Sam Patterson versus Yanal Ashmoff. Patterson is 6 inches taller. He's a 6'3". Lightweight. That's insane. That's Jalen Turner territory. I don't have an Ashmoff reach edge or reach measurement, so I don't know what the reach edge is. But I assume Patterson has a considerable one. He's a lanky bastard. Ridiculously tall, like I said. Obviously, that brings certain advantages in terms of range of engagement, and also the ability to lock up chokes from front headlock or take a choke. He's quite good at that, actually. But I don't think he's a particularly athletic guy. I don't think he's particularly powerful. I don't think he's particularly coordinated. I don't think he's particularly fast. I don't think he's particularly good at wrestling. Although he does like the clinch, does like to land knees there, utilize his height, break down the posture, hit you with knees to the body, hit you with knees to the head. I don't think he's very good. I also don't think Ashmoff is very good. Ashmoff is a guy who I've seen just get taken down a lot. He does seem to hit hard because he finishes people with strikes a lot, but I have no idea how durable they are. I do like his composure. Like he's a guy who gets taken down and then he'll throw sweeps up. He'll stay calm. He'll find solutions. But like I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 years' time both of these guys were not in the UFC anymore. And I will go with Patterson by virtue of being really tall and that maybe being like really, really awkward for Ashmoff to deal with. But the Patterson 270 to 3 or minus 270 to minus 300 favorite odds to Ashmoss plus 210 to plus 235. I don't know. I feel like this is kind of a pick'em fight. You have Ashmoss, who, to be honest, actually seems like the better technical fighter. You have Patterson, who's huge. That's about it, really. I don't know. I don't have great hopes for this fight. But hey, it might wow me. Biggest favorite on the card, I do believe, is Mohamed Mokaev against Hafel, or is it Hafel? It's a J, or Jafel? Filo? We'll just go with Filo. Mokaev is the same height as him, but he has a 1.2-inch reach edge because he's quite lanky. I still think Mokaev is tremendously overhyped, honestly. I honestly thought he was overhyped coming in, and then people were like, haha, look what he did to Cody Durden. He's actually really, really good. And then the Charles Johnson and Malcolm Gordon fights happened. And two guys that are not amazing. I mean, keep in mind, Charles Johnson had a bit of a renaissance there where I was like, hey, this guy might be putting something together. And then he lost to O'Day Osborne. And despite being from my neck of the woods, and we're going to talk about him later, I have no faith in Malcolm Gordon. None. And he had a lot of problems with both of those guys. Controlling them on the ground and really getting anything done other than takedowns. And he eventually did submit Gordon, but hey, if that didn't cool you on him, I don't know what does. And I think the UFC is cooled on him because they have him back fighting a Dana White Contender Series graduate in Philo instead of fighting like an established flyweight. Here's the thing about Mokaev that really bugs me, okay? He came in with all the hype. He's 22 years old, super young, still has time. But it's kind of weird that his fans and himself have walked the goalposts around repetitively with him, because after the Gordon fight was like a classic example of this. You had Mokaev fans and Mokaev himself going like, I'm actually super young. He's a veteran. He's a black belt. He's like these are guys I'm supposed to be struggling with, and so on. It's like, yeah, but you were also talking about being the youngest ever UFC champion when you came in. So again, the expectations and the hype and the criticisms of Mokaev are all based on his own hype train that he fueled and threw coal in the bunker to get going and chewing straight downhill. Like, you want to be a big superstar, you have to perform like a big superstar. If he was just a flyweight prospect, the Johnson fight would still look bad, but the Gordon fight would be perfectly fine. Anyways, you might be thinking I'm picking the big upset here. I'm not. Philo does not ask the right questions. He wants to go to the ground with him. He likes to initiate grappling exchanges, which if you're going to initiate on Mokaev, he's going to out-scramble you, he's going to out-wrestle you, he's going to do his thing, he's going to get the thing done. I don't think Philo has great instincts for being on bottom. I think he's used to being the stronger guy, the better grappler. He's probably not going to be here. He does have kind of like a Bruno Silva 2.0 energy because he's got nice power and kind of hits from awkward angles and stuff. If he can refine himself, he's actually a really interesting prospect. It's just, at this point in time, Mokaev should get him. I don't know if he should be a minus 770 to 900 favorite, though. And Philo plus 540 to plus 600. Further on down, we have Lerone Murphy versus Gabriel Santos. Murphy is 2 inches, has 2 inches in reach. They are the same height. I like both fighters. They're both undefeated prospects. Murphy is a guy who's kind of came out of nowhere in the UFC. I didn't really know who he was. And he's done incredibly well. We're talking about a guy who has beaten Douglas Silva de Andrade, Ricardo Ramos, etc. It's very good. He's a stud athlete, well put together striker who seems pretty confident, front foot, back foot, range, pocket, clinch. Seems like he's got it all put together there. Seems like he's hard to out-wrestle. Has decently solid grappling awareness. Santos is a bit wild, but he's also creative. Varies up his targets a lot. Has all the right physical tools. I just think Murphy is a higher degree of athlete, a little bit more put together, and will be probably that kind of athletic wake-up call. Kind of similar Lerone Murphy's fight with Douglas D. Silva de Andrade, although Santos feels less raw than Andrade because Andrade is incredibly raw. But I got to pick Murphy by decision. He is a surprisingly low favorite, minus 170 to minus 175 against a debuting fighter. Santos at plus 140 to plus 155. I get Santos has got a lot of heat or hype. Rightfully so. This guy is an exciting prospect. But I don't know. I expected it to be wider. Oh boy, these last 5 fights. Christian Leroy Duncan versus Dushko Todorovic. Talk about two horribly flawed fighters. Duncan's an inch taller. I don't have a reach reading on him, but I think it's probably about parity with Todorovic. What to say about Christian Leroy Duncan? Athletic, powerful, dangerous, likes throwing jumping knees. There's some spinning stuff he'll throw in there. He's patient, surprisingly patient, like willing to kind of take it easy and set things up. Has all the physical ability to be a really, really good fighter. But my God, is his wrestling seemingly shit. Like, dude is easy to force into the clinch. He can be taken down there. He can be controlled. Not really punished because he's very, very strong. Smaller guys have just mashed him into the cage and eventually gotten finished by him, don't get me wrong, but have had a lot of success against him. I really have massive questions about where he fits in this division right now. But the bright side is Dushko Todorovic probably is going to try to box with him because he starts out trying to box with virtually everybody. He will go to the clinch and he will try to wrestle if he gets hurt, but usually only if he gets hurt. He's easy to hurt because he's incredibly hittable. Doesn't really move his head. He is a product of being an athletic dude fighting on the Serbian regional scene, which you remember how, like, over the last couple of days, we've had last couple of months, we've had a bunch of Argentinian fighters coming in, and I've been talking about, like, the Argentinian regional scene is bad. This is a problem because it's going to be a while before it develops real talent. Serbian scene is that times like 50 because it is even further behind. Duncan by TKO, he's a minus 190 to minus 225 favorite. And Todorovic is plus 164 to plus 185. That is more confident than I feel. But you've got a guy who wins by knockout a lot. You have a guy who is incredibly easy to hit. I got to go with the knockout artist. Jake Hadley versus Malcolm Gordon. Gordon is has 2 inches reach. Surprisingly enough, no height advantage, which might be the first time I've seen that. Because Malcolm Gordon is a tall flyweight. I like Hadley. He's a pressure fighter. He likes to get takedowns. He throws a pretty reasonable volume with decent form. Has a little bit of nice pop in his punches. I would like to believe in Gordon. He's from my neck of the woods. He's got some decent X factors with like power and speed and explosiveness and some surprisingly good grappling. But he's incredibly hurtable. He's incredibly pressurable. And I just can't really see Hadley not getting him down and not controlling him for a little bit and putting on the ground and pound on him and winning a decision, I guess. I would not be surprised if he finishes him because Gordon is, like I said, pretty chinny. Very glass chin. Like, so much so that it's actually been an issue at flyweight where there's not a lot of big hitters. But Hadley doesn't hit that hard. Gordon did put up a really good fight against Mokaev. Depending on what your view on if you still think Mokaev is a really, really, really amazing fighter and not just a prospect, you should probably take Gordon here because it's a very similar dynamic. But I am going with Hadley. But oh my lord, minus 310 to minus 450 on Hadley? Gordon plus 255 to plus 325? Nope. That's a stupid line. Women's flyweight fight, Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina. They are the same height, but Carolina has freakishly large reach. She's got 3.5 inches on Wood. This is a fight that at most times in history I would have picked Wood without a like that. Hope you heard that snap. Because Carolina is bad. She's a sloppy striker. She's a sloppy grappler. She has like all the physical X factors. Like she's big, she's strong, she seems reasonably durable, and she does seem like kind of comfortable when a fight breaks down and whatever. but she is not good. There is no skill in her bag that seems particularly competent. She has like this grab bag of random skills that I'm legitimately not sure how it even developed. It feels like we need a biography pick on Luana Carolina explaining like how she has become the fighter she's become. But JoJo has looked not good. I know she went to a split decision with Lauren Murphy. I know Alexa Grasso is actually a really good fighter who is now the champion and just finished, literally just finished, Valentina Shevchenko with a rear naked choke. But that Grasso fight was not good. The Tyler Santos fight was not good. I know Santos is also a very good fighter, but she also got armbarred in the first round by Jennifer Maia. She had a very competitive fight with Andrea Lee on the way to winning, losing Caitlin Chukagian. She's fading. She's 37 years old. There is notably less athletic ability in her. She was never a super stud athlete to begin with. And I do believe we are witnessing the end of JoJo Wood as a UFC caliber fighter. But please don't let it be Liana Carolina that beats her. Please don't let that happen. I am taking JoJo by decision. And she is a minus 170 to minus 190 favorite. Liana Carolina plus 143 to plus 160. That does feel about right. Now we get to the underdog I'm taking on this card. Jai Herbert against Ludovic Klein. Herbert, 6 inches taller, 5 inches longer. These guys are admittedly tracking in completely different directions. When Herbert came in, I was like, hey, this is a tall dude with a lot of reach and a pretty solid range boxing game and kickboxing game. He's not a terrible counter wrestler. He's not a terrible grappler. He's got decent strength and so on. I really like what I like what he's going to do. And admittedly, the UFC matched him up pretty harshly because, I want to say his debut was against, Francisco Trinaldo or something. Let's see here. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's like, here's Francisco Trinaldo and Hanato Moicano for your debut. Here's Kama Worthy. Here's Ilya Taporia. And here's Kyle Nelson. I assume the deal there is that being a Cage Warriors champion, they had to pay him a reasonable amount of money. And as a result, they matched him up as a, star before he was a star sort of thing. And it's been a rough run. But I would say also he's beaten the guys he probably should beat. Klein, kind of the inverse. He's a guy that I picked against a lot. I picked against him in both of his recent wins against Devontae Smith and Mason Jones. And he got those wins. So, I don't know. I still don't believe in him, though. Like, he's a 5'7" flyweight not 5'7" at flyweight would be good. 5'7" at lightweight. 5'7" at lightweight, who is sort of like this, would like to be an outside kickboxer. And I don't think that's really a functional style. Now, I will say this. Herbert's fight against Kyle Nelson did not inspire my confidence at all. He's a guy who I think is worried that he's not durable. And probably is not durable. He's a guy who I think is questioning his style and what brought him here and all that. And that's not good. But I am going with Herbert by decision. I can't buy a decline. I'm sorry. It's not a personal thing. I literally know nothing about Klein as a person. It's just I watch him fight. I'm just like, this should not function. This should be low-end action fighter ability. And Herbert, I do honestly feel, is a pretty solid lightweight. He is the underdog, though, plus 140 to plus 168. Klein is the minus 160 to minus 210 favorite. That is too wide. Veronica Hardy, formerly Macedo, versus Juliana Miller. Miller is 3 inches taller, 2 inches longer. Macedo's UFC career has not been amazing. She's been here for 6 years. And I think only fought 5 times. She's pulled out of. She's had 5 canceled fights, 4 of which she pulled out of, 1 of which her opponent did. She hasn't really developed as a fighter in the way I think she should. Seems like a lovely, lovely person. I watched her interview on the MMA Hour. I honestly wish her the best, but I've never been impressed with anything she does, aside from being like kind of a little bit optimistic as a grappler. I don't really like her striking game. Don't really like her wrestling game. I don't really like her clinch game. Miller, not someone I believe in a ton. I picked against her in the Ultimate Fighter finale. I was surprised she made the finals, honestly. She doesn't appear to be a great athlete, but at the same time, it didn't seem to stop her from beating Brogan Walker. She's pathologically aggressive. She's a talented grappler and a willing striker. She'll throw at high volume and kind of like it's kind of like a Merab effect a little bit, where Merab Dvalishvili is impressive because of his cardio. Yes, he's a good wrestler and everything, but like the impressive thing about him is the fact that he can fight for that kind of pace for 25 minutes. Miller has kind of like a similar thing going, but of course it's women's flyweight, so it's a much lower level. I'm assuming this is at flyweight anyways. Yeah, it is. They both feel kind of small for it, but anyways, going back to the fight, I just think that Miller will put the volume and the pace on her and pick up the decision victory. I wouldn't rule out a TKO or even a submission. Miller does like to finish, even though I don't think she's a particularly potent finisher. She is a minus 400 to minus 455 favorite, though, with Hardy being plus 300 to plus 350. If you're going to say that we're fading on Hardy because she's not been in the cage for a while, but we're bidding big on Gunnar Nelson, I don't really get that. I don't really get having Miller at minus 400 plus against, honestly, anybody. But hey, whatever. She'll probably win the fight. So there are some live dogs on this card, but overall, I'm looking forward to some of the action, but it does feel like a bit of a letdown for the pay-per-view standards, because we've been kind of structuring the UFC to be, hey guys, the fight night cards are going to be terrible because we need to put Contender Series fighters on them to save money, which, by the way, the UFC has admitted, because the UFC has been touting about how they've reduced costs in regards to fighters in a big way. That's fighter pay. They're probably, I think the estimates are they're probably down to about 15% of revenue going to the fighters. That's terrible. I'm sorry. And there are going to be people that are going to defend it. Here's the thing. There's no defense for this. There is a permissibility where, like, you don't care about fighter pay. That's fine. Whatever. If you're sitting there listening to the sound of my voice and you're like, I don't give a crap what the fighters make. They're adults. They signed a contract. That's fine. But don't go around telling me about how the UFC needs to exist like this. And also, why am I not complaining about like Bellator pay or whatever? Because here's the thing. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I don't like Bellator pay. I also don't believe they can pay more. We're talking about a business that has UFC with an 80+% share of global revenue. You cannot compare their pay to anybody else, because it should be something like 4 to 5 times higher for an entry-level fighter, just based on the sheer scale of things. There you go. All right. So, below, to the left, to the right, there are links. Check them out. I will see you after the fights.